Okay, hi guys. Welcome to the Advancements in Telebehavioral Health panel discussion at the HealthTech Rapid Conference December event, hosted by the HealthTech Networking Club. I'm Lindsey Williams, founder of Corylus Consulting and MyUTI, and I will be your moderator for this panel discussion. The monthly HealthTech Rapid Conference events are organized by the HealthTech Networking Club, an exclusive networking club that brings together influential members of the HealthTech community. If you'd like more information on the monthly HealthTech Rapid Conference event series or the HealthTech Networking Club, please head to Bene Studios website. So right now what I'm going to do is introduce our panelists, and each of these panelists are going to introduce themselves, a little bit about their roles and past experience, and provide to you a quick definition of how they personally define the telebehavioral health tech market for us to begin our conversation around the ethical, technical, and clinical evolution of mental health technology. So I'm going to start here with Pennie. If you would take 2 minutes to give yourself an introduction and a brief background.
She's muted.
Thank you for having me take that off. All right, thank you very much. Okay, I'm Pennie Sempell with StressPal, and we are a healthcare provider-led driven program and project that we're working here on. I have dual backgrounds. I came from UC Berkeley in psychology. My first projects were in mind-body medicine back at the inceptions of those days, and I migrated into law and practicing conflict resolution and mediation for a number of years, ran a law firm before migrating back to integrative health, where I pioneered programs over 20 years at a major medical center in San Francisco in patient education, and decided we really have to do something to help physicians provide with evidence-based tools to help patients. I teamed up with clinical psychologists, longtime colleague, and we founded StressPal. His expertise is in psychological medicine and stress resilience. And we formed our team and went from there. So as far as looking at, definition of behavioral health, of course, this is a huge field, and mental health, substance abuse, social determinants of health are very serious and complex external situations and the internal experiences of people's lives. And while there's been a plethora of good advice and wellness tools, self-care tools out there for decades, apps are the newest version, we still have epidemic levels of lifestyle and stress diseases. So this is the area we're tackling, and online tools have a great potential to help, but they're going to have to be reasonable, resources. They're going to have to be safe and secure and responsible. So that's hope that's 2 minutes.
That's perfect. Thank you, Pennie. All right, Arlen, would you like to go next?
Sure. Thanks for inviting me. I'm Dr. Arlen Meyers. I'm the president and CEO of the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs. We're a global biomedical and clinical innovation and entrepreneurship network, and our mission is to help our members get their ideas to patients. We're an open innovation network. So we basically encourage anyone, regardless of their background, to join us as long as they have an interest in getting an idea to patients. In addition to that, I'm a recovering academic ear, nose, and throat surgeon. I'm a professor at the University of Colorado, and I consult to multiple companies, including some telebehavioral health companies. So thanks for doing this, and congratulations. You guys are doing a good job in producing this.
All right, Mark, would you like to go next?
My name is Mark Nolte. I'm the CEO and founder of Start Talking. We're a teletherapy company. My background is I've spent 30 years in medical devices, working in the operating room, primarily laparoscopic and orthopedic and spine, working for Ethicon, Johnson & Johnson Company, and Stryker Endoscopy. Then for about 10 years, I had my own medical distributorship. And then after being in medical devices for over 30 years, Not to get in politics but with Obamacare, I didn't like to see where the market was going, and decided that was not the place to be, and decided to jump into teletherapy. And the reason I got into teletherapy is because my own personal experience with depression. Back in 2010, I was diagnosed with depression, but I tell people I was one of the lucky ones because I went and got help, and now I live a much happier and productive life. But it made me realize how antiquated the system was and how difficult it was to get therapy. And so we've been doing this for over 4 years now. We've been a customer of Zoom since September of 2016. So I'd like to say that we were Zoom before Zoom was cool. And so we have 41 therapists on board to provide teletherapy, and we're in 9 different states, and we have over 10 EAP and insurance contracts now. So happy to be a part of the panel. Thanks for having me.
Okay, and Balint, you want to go next?
Yeah, thanks. Hello, everybody. My name is Balint Bene. I'm the CEO of Bene Studio, and we are a digital product consultancy, and we are focusing on health technology. And with the 100+ application developments behind me and the company, I would like to bring into this panel the product and the technology aspects. And my experience is that it's equally important for startups and for enterprises as well, to providing better and better user experience and more secure and reliable technology infrastructures. So my definition about the Telebehavioral health technology is from this aspect, and what I can see is the key is the trust. So we must win trust with our systems, with our digital services, because it's a really sensitive field, even within the health and digital health space, because this field, the mental and behavioral health is a really sensitive part. If we talk about the data, we talk about the information, it must be secure, and we should provide a really secure environment for the users to have this trust. So we must work on that to have a better usage of this new technology.
Thank you so much. So today we're going to start off with kind of 2 overarching topics, and we'll dive a little bit into that. Obviously, this is a really big topic, and it's not meant to be exhaustive, but I think just having a conversation with these esteemed panelists around their expertise and to provide some key insights for investors and innovators in this space. So the first topic we're going to cover is the ethical, technical, and clinical evolution of mental health technology. And some key points in there to consider are the increasing importance of finding digital white space, the differentiation between clinical and wellness tools, and balancing user experience with data privacy. So Arlen, I'll start with you because we had a conversation last week talking about just how COVID and the rapid expansion of digital health has really changed this marketplace. And my question to you at that time was, how do you even define kind of all of the different buckets that the various applications and services can fall into? So do you want to share your thoughts on that with us?
Sure. Thanks for asking me to be on the panel. So the way I see this is that, first of all, digital health has lots of definitions, and mine is the application of information and communications technologies to exchange medical information for various intended uses. Those intended uses could be predictive, they could be prescriptive, they could be descriptive, they could be, whichever domain you want to work in, plus a given medical domain. Could be everything from hearts to psychology to you name it. So within digital health, there are several subcategories. There's probably 10 or 12, and one of them is telemedicine. Others include, for example, big data analytics or EMRs or et cetera, remote sensing, patient-reported outcomes. But in this particular conversation, we're talking about telemedicine as a subsection of digital health. Now, there is a difference in some minds between telemedicine and telehealth. And telemedicine is essentially, in my view, teleacute care or tele-sick care. You're taking care of someone remotely who has a particular problem, whether symptoms, signs, et cetera. And in general, you're trying to treat them remotely. Telehealth refers more broadly to information, education, wellness, nudging, behavior change, in addition to what I call tele-sick care. And just incidentally, I call it sick care because that's what it is. Today, there was a release that US spending in healthcare went up 5%. So now we're at 3.8 trillion. We were at 3.7 trillion last year. And 96% of that is spent on sick care, taking care of sick patients, not healthcare. So the basic idea is in conversations like this to engage individuals to transform sick care into healthcare. Now, if we specifically talk about telebehavioral health or telepsychiatry, then there's two basic models: a patient talking to a person or a patient talking to a machine. And that machine could be a bot, it could be an AI generated avatar, it could be a virtual person, it could be a digital double. And the general idea is that some applications in telebehavioral health have to do with, as I said, treating specific symptoms versus information and education. And that's an important differentiation, particularly when it comes to regulatory affairs, because fundamentally what we are talking about is, or the question you should ask yourself is what you're producing is a medical device or is it not? Because if it is a medical device, then you have a different regulatory road to follow and requirements than if it's not a medical device. So I'll stop there and be happy to answer any questions and follow on to the other panelists.
Yeah, I think Pennie, you had a great point the other day when we spoke about this in terms of developing tools that would be, more considered wellness applications versus clinical tools. And there were lots of different aspects of that, right? In terms of, yes, what Arlen mentioned of his regulatory path, but also just in terms of, are you really truly trying to impact behavioral change and what considerations should, be made for that? So I don't know if you want to comment on some of what we spoke to. Unmute.
Okay. And to start, I think we need to add here that there really is there's more than three buckets, but for this conversation, if we talk about a clinical tool that's used as in a treatment protocol, that's one bucket. We have another that's out there, maybe consumer wellness kind of program that's advice, some strategies, recommendations. We also have that preventative care. And I think we get murky around our words sometimes of what is wellness, what's preventive care. Let's call preventive care that piece that's really tied in to treatment protocol. And that's the area we're particularly interested in. I want to give some background so we get a sense of the scope of the problem we have out here. And many of you probably already know this, but I think it's kind of worth recapping the magnitude of the issues that we're facing around behavioral change and the seriousness of the approach that it should take if you're developing these tools. A recent report I read is 1 in 4 people reported to have a mental health or substance disorder issues. That's a very significant percentage of our population. Of course, there's a huge range in there within which what is the level of the difficulty in behavioral or mental health and substance use. We have a number of studies that have shown that 75% of all office visits are for stress-related illnesses. And that's also a wide spectrum of disorders, many of which we normally consider physical health, but there's a stress-related component to that illness, and that's 75% of doctor visits. despite the plethora of stress relief apps we have out there and programs. We have a very high majority of patients testing, about 80% testing poor in psychological resilience and high in stress levels. We also know from other bodies of work that social determinants of health and lifestyle behaviors has a far greater impact on one's health than one's medical care. So that piece about what is happening at home and in one's life and in one's environment is enormous and complex. Capped it all with this, we have a huge shortage of healthcare providers. So the importance and we have also within that deep system-wide drivers of clinician burnout and attrition, people leaving the profession. So there's a really high bar, I think, that we have to provide, and where our focus really is to provide truly responsible preventive care behavior tools and mechanisms to make the patient, the provider-patient relationship work more effectively, and to allow providers to be able to provide better care, lower cost, and to more people. And then the problem, I'm sure many of you are aware of studies also, 28 of the most popular mental health apps in a recent study, only 5 were found to be evidence-based. Also of concern, 116 mobile apps, for example, in depression, only 4% had acceptable scores for transparency and data protection. So we've got, and in another study in just 2019, I think 92% of the 36 top mental health apps shared data, mostly marketing and advertising and data analytics, and the privacy policies did not disclose or were inaccurate about that. So these are very serious problems we need to overcome. And whether you're talking about a wellness, a preventive care, or a clinical tool, I feel that all these problems need to address because of the responsibility and the enormity of the problem that real people are facing in their lives.
Yeah, that's some really scary statistics that you just shared. And Balint, I would love to hear your thoughts from a design and technical perspective, especially regarding the data and the transparency and privacy considerations that innovators and investors alike really need to be looking for.
Yeah, thanks for the question. And let me join to Pennie's thoughts. So especially within the wellness space, where it's possible to create a useful application easier compared to a clinical tool, we should be really careful, not just as users, but as stakeholders in that services, because it's really easy to estimate the importance of the technical and security aspects, and I can see a trend and 2 really different group of users. One group is who are really careful and they are really afraid of the security issues. They take care of their personal data, especially their health data, and the mental and behavioral health data really much, because from a society perspective, it's important to keep it private. So for this group, they use significantly less services which could be useful for them, because they're really afraid about the potential problems. And if the landscape is really colorful, I mean, there are secure and stable services, and there are different level of security in other applications, then it's really hard to convince them that okay, please be more trustful and use these new tools, not just the physical doctor visits, because we can't provide that all the applications and channels are secure and respecting their needs. But I can see another group which is basically the opposite, and we should take care about that as well, because if people are too open for the new platforms, new solutions, it can be also a problem in midterm or in the long run, because these people who don't care much about privacy and health data, they may face serious problems later, and that problems, that scandals affect the whole industry as well. So from an ethical perspective and also from a technical perspective, we must understand these two really different groups, and we must provide the solution and to have the trust from the careful group, and to help saving the data of the open group, because both end of the scale are problems for the development of the digital services.
And I think those are some really great points, especially considering kind of the explosion that has really happened in the telebehavioral space, specifically amongst that younger generation, right? As everyone is coming up through this very difficult time with COVID. And Mark, I don't know if you want to comment on kind of the impact that COVID has had on that wellness area, and how the rapid adoption from a younger generation who cares a little bit less about that privacy data has impacted the overall market for telebehavioral health.
Yeah, so before COVID, like I said, we've been doing teletherapy since 2016, but before COVID, we were probably doing 25 to 30% of our behavioral health through video, and the rest was in office setting. Well, then, and a lot of therapists were hesitant to do teletherapy. I've been talking for 4 years saying, you need to get on board. This is the future and everything. And then they're saying, oh, it's just a fad. It'll never take off. Well, then all of a sudden COVID happened, and it was like, hey, Mark, the teletherapy thing you've been talking to me for 4 years, I'm ready to do it now. Can you have me set up by noon today? So, and I will say this, I'm going to just show a slide here real fast, if I may. Here's a study that was done by Rochester Medical Center, and this is for telemedicine. And they were predicting back in 2015 that in 2024, virtual visits would surpass office visits in telemedicine. Well, because of COVID, you can take this apex and slide it all the way back to March of 2020. And so it's accelerated the whole process by 4 years. And that's the effect that COVID has had on telemedicine and teletherapy. And so now, instead of doing 25 to 30% of therapy by video, it's almost 100%. And it's not going back to where it was. It's the genie's out of the bottle, so to speak, and it's going to continue to progress from here.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. So that really actually leads us quite well into kind of the next topic in terms of future considerations for innovators and investors in telebehavioral health, and really looking at kind of a post-COVID world. Obviously, we've seen just the rapid expansion of all things, right, digital health related. And what does that mean for innovators and investors specific to telebehavioral health? So Arlen, I think you had mentioned early on in this conversation, regulatory considerations, right? So what are some things in regulatory futures that we need to be aware of?
Well, I think in terms of moving forward, folks in the audience need to ask themselves a couple questions. And so I'm looking at this from a business development. How do you get an idea to a patient perspective? One is, how are you going to compete? How are you going to compete against Amazon? So Amazon announced yesterday, they have Prime Health, and now they're going to roll it out, and they're trying to sell it to the likes of other startups and large companies. So if you're a small niche player, how are you going to compete with those folks? And there's various strategies and ways to do that. And maybe that's the subject of another webinar. The second is, how are you going to develop a business model that in the brave new world makes sense? Does, for example, should physicians, and the previous person mentioned fee for service and value-based, what should your product look like in a value-based world? Now, again, we can get into a conversation about what is value-based care and how much of it do we do and what the barriers and fee for service and all that. But I think it's fair to say that value-based will eventually migrate into the sick care model, hopefully a healthcare model. So how are you going to position your product? Third is, which is part of the first part, which is, where's the barrier to entry? I mean, pretty much these days, anybody can set up a dating service matching a provider with a target patient online. There's really not a whole lot of barrier to doing that. So if you have a particular situation, for example, providing, I believe one of the people previously has a product where they're providing these services via television. Well, they're not the only folks doing this. I mean, the cable industry has been looking at this for years, and all of a sudden they're accelerating their business models to provide this kind of education over television sets, which incidentally has a much bigger worldwide penetration than cell phones. So how are you going to compete in that world? And finally, how are you going to navigate the regulatory, reimbursement, and intellectual property challenges that you will be presented with because of either the lag of or acceleration of things due to COVID? Now, a typical example is a national telemedicine license or a national medical license. And incidentally, this applies to veterinary medicine as well. I work with a company that's trying to provide telehealth services to goats, to people who, the agriculture industry in goat husbandry, which you may say, well, gee, that's kind of silly. Well, it turns out that's a pretty big global industry, particularly in Australia and in New Zealand, where, there's 50 million sheep and 5 million people. So it's a big deal. So if you're not looking at the future of regulatory affairs, reimbursement, intellectual property, your model will be disrupted. I hate to use the word disrupted, but basically you're going to go out of business. Someone is going to take you out. So you have to prepare yourself for that future. And specifically to the question of regulatory affairs, again, it depends whether you have a person-to-person model or whether you have a machine-to-person model, because the FDA now is trying to figure out, for example, AI as a service, clinical decision support as a service, software as a medical device, and all of that is in conversation as we speak. So you really have to keep up with the health law and the FDA regs to figure out where you're going to pick your spot and how you're going to play.
Yeah, I think that's some really great points. And, specifically what you referenced when we spoke about, the German law that just basically the equivalency to our FDA that came in and started to enact some new measures with all of these digital, applications for healthcare. And do you feel like there's a timeline horizon on that for what we can see in terms of, should we be expecting the FDA to start to regulate, within the next, 2, 3, 5 years?
No, it's happening now. I mean, there's this old saying that, the future is now, it's just unevenly distributed. It's happening now. So if you're not tuned into this, you're already behind the curve. And there will be a lot of ethical guidelines issued. There will be reports. There will be, guidance documents. There are all kinds of things that are coming out with, because it changes every day. And particularly when you try to integrate artificial intelligence into all of this, that just adds a whole nother layer of complexity and the specific issues to artificial intelligence, not the least of which is bias, confidential security, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's a whole list of problems with artificial intelligence, and some were already mentioned, namely trust.
Yeah, absolutely. And Balint, I don't know if you want to chime in here around, what we've talked about the bias in AI, and especially when you're dealing with something with, mental health and obviously security is an issue of data privacy and maybe some, younger generations don't care as much about that. But in general, the opportunity for discrimination in medicine is a serious consideration when developing these platforms. And so how, from a technical perspective, can we balance that user experience with appropriate privacy and unbiased as much as possible, right? Platforms and technology innovation.
Yeah, from my perspective, this is the biggest question. If we would like to create a new startup, balance between the security and between the user experience. Because from the business perspective, the functions, the features, the cost-effective development, these aspects will be the most important, of course. And from the user perspective, also a lightweight, easy to use application is a great value. So we could see that data security is the enemy of the business and enemy of the users' comfort as well. But it's definitely not true. So we must balance with the other side as well. And if we focus more on the architecture and the secure data handling, then we can spend more and more focus, time, money on the background work, and we will have less and less money for the business and for the customer care. So it's a really sensitive balance. We must find the best for our actual situation and our actual phase, and it's not one rule which is the working balance, but it depends on the actual startup and actual business. And if we talk about the entering opportunities, then I can see two main fields where it's easy to enter because the barrier is lower. So one is the growing wellness space. So to start a new startup and get traction, even revenues, users, easier within the wellness space. And it's good news that that both from the users and from the providers perspective, it's a needed space. Everybody would like to grow it, but it's a slower process. So there are possibilities to join into the wellness space. And another space which provides step-by-step growing opportunities is the B2B side of the more strict clinical space, where it's possible to connect to bigger, more established providers and getting traction, revenues, and even professional feedback step by step. So these two fields could help the investors having results early on, and also possibilities for the startup founders as well, getting a good niche for their new product.
Yeah, and that raises another point. I think we had chatted, both Arlen and Pennie and I had chatted early last week about this, of how do you balance the ethics of medicine with the ethics of business, right? Because sometimes those can feel very conflicting for founders. And I think that's really an important part, especially in this audience, to discuss how to navigate through that, because this is a very difficult environment already. And now we're talking about even more difficult complications. So Arlen, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, this is a big topic, and just fundamentally, obviously, the ethics of medicine is different, are different than the ethics of business. And how you reconcile the two, particularly in a place like the United States where sick care is a business. In fact, it's the largest business. How do you reconcile your personal moral values with the ethics of medical professionalism, with the ethics of business? And that's a question we can have a conversation with, but ultimately we're all going to have to answer to our own conscience. Examples, I'll just give you one example, and that is the ethics of medicine basically primarily place the patient before the interest of anyone else or any other organization, including your company. So if it's just strictly a profit motive, that conflicts with taking care of patients who don't have money. And in the case of telebehavioral health and telemedicine in general, the problem is inequitable access. There's a huge digital divide. So most of the companies that are listening to this are trying to make money, and they're going to make money by following the money, whether it's a patient willing to pay, an employer willing to give them a per member per month, or some sort of insurance company that's willing to do it. Well, I'll leave you with two facts. One, there are 1.6 billion people in sub-Saharan Africa without electricity, let alone digital health. Two, 25% of the rural counties in Colorado do not have broadband. If there is no digital, there is no digital health. So the question then is, how does that work for you? If you're a physician and you own a digital health company, how's that working for you?
Yeah, I think that's great. Pennie, I'd love for you to share, as you did with me prior to this conversation, a little bit about your journey as a founder and having to really draw a hard line in the sand around your ethics and mission for the company, despite pressure from investors, right, to sometimes maybe take a different path. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure, thank you. There's great discussion here and terrific points raised by the panelists. I really appreciate that. Well, both our co-founder, Jim Monroe, who's a clinical psychologist, and I in the integrative health education space, we're really committed to looking at how does behavioral change actually happen. And behavioral change, you might compare it to something like, learning a musical instrument or another language. It's something that happens incrementally over time, and the excellence of the training, the guide, how that happens is crucial. We really come from a place of content, and I think that that's a piece of the conversation that I really want to bring forward today. When it comes to behavioral health, mental health, what is it you're providing? Now, there's the group that's providing the access to, right? The networking, the ability to communicate, and I really applaud Mark's work in this area. How do we provide ease and facility so that people get access to care? But then if you're going to be providing something that's providing something for that person, some wellness thing, what is that content? And I was at a HIMSS conference a couple of years ago. At that time, there were already 300,000 health and wellness apps out there. The market's glutted. Consumers don't know what to do, and most of them are not helpful, and some are harmful. I mean, that's another piece of this, is poor advice on health care. So I think we looked at what does the evidence show as far as, in one area, what's the content about the subject you're dealing with in behavioral medicine or behavioral health? What's that content? Is it around sleep? Is it around lifestyle change? Is it around eating? Is it around stress? What is that area? Are you following the evidence? Where are you going to stand? What are your values? And are you going to stand for excellence? Not just some study you kind of did back there with 25 or 30 people. Are you following the literature, the peer-reviewed research on not only what the content is that you're exploring in behavioral health, but how people learn? So the challenge of patient engagement, I think, is the third big one. You've got security, you've got content. What is the quality of that content? Is it clinically validated? How are you measuring that? What metrics are you using? So we held in StressPal, we use validated assessments, pre and post. These are assessments used deeply in psychology research. What are your metrics? What are you going to really put your tool to the test on? Are you really going to study it and measure how people are doing? And these are crucial areas. And then there's engagement. So one of the huge bars and problems is people do trust their docs for advice. They go home and they have the best of intentions, but it often falls by the wayside. And we have a couple, there's, or they start something and then stop. Well, life and overwhelm get in the way. So we have to deal with the reality that people are overwhelmed, assuming we can, reach them with our program. There's a lot in people's lives, which is why we took on dealing with the fundamental foundation of health, which is resilience, psychological resilience. So we took on, because overwhelm and stress debilitates people's ability to follow their medication program, to follow their diet regime, their lifestyle changes. So my advice, you also have to look at, my advice to all of you is really look at the engagement piece, because that is a very high bar. How do people learn? How do they stay engaged? How do they stay motivated to complete whatever the program is you're providing to help them make behavioral change? These are daunting tasks, but they are doable. We do have expertise in diverse fields out there that you can bring into your team to take on some of these challenges. So that's what we did. It took us a couple of years. We weren't rushing to get to market. We were rushing to get best practices, gold standard, and set a new gold standard for behavioral change in healthcare.
I would make a further point, and by its nature, behavioral health is about changing behavior. And there's two ways fundamentally. Simon Sinek in Getting to Why mentions that there's basically two ways to change doctor and patient behavior. One is manipulation, the other is inspiration. Where is the line? And what is ethical and what is not? And does it, for example, gamification, for example, nudging, for example, behavioral economics, is that ethical? Are we simply manipulating behavior, whether it's on social media or not, for the so-called good of the patient, or are we doing it for the good of the company?
I think that's a really great point. Mark, I'd love to hear your perspective on this, because I think we've kind of danced around it, but with all of the kind of influx, especially amidst COVID, of digital mental health technology coming to the forefront, is there a guidepost or a lighthouse in terms of someone who's done it right, a beacon that we can look to?
You mean as far as following the ethics, or exactly what do you mean?
Well, I think just in general, right? In the context of kind of our conversation, of someone who's developed a platform that serves the right purpose, that matches kind of their business ethics with their medical ethics, or that we know of, right? Is there someone that you see that's providing good quality behavioral change tools in the market, and that's approaching the market the right way?
Yeah, so interesting question, because a lot of therapists pre-COVID thought that if they were doing teletherapy, they were giving not as good a quality of therapy. They thought that for some reason that the best quality of therapy was to do an in-office or in-person therapy. And I always cringe when people say, well, face-to-face. Well, I got news for them. Video is face-to-face. So there's, that ethics of, are you giving less service or better quality therapy by doing it by video? And now that COVID's happened and a lot of the therapists were forced into doing this, I've talked to every one of them, and they have almost the same answer. I said, well, what was your thoughts before COVID, before you did teletherapy, and what's your thoughts now? And they said, well, I was very hesitant to do teletherapy, but now that I've done it, it's much easier and I like it. And some therapists are going to close their offices and only do teletherapy only. And we also know through our pilot program we did 4 years ago that there's a 30% less cancellation with teletherapy. And the reason is there's no longer transportation issues. There's no longer, so you have to hire a babysitter. you have to pay for parking. And so because there's 30% less no-show or cancellation rate, the patients are getting better sooner because they're engaged and they keep their appointments. And two, the therapists like it because if they have a no-show, that's revenue that they've lost, that they could have booked another appointment, but it's too late to book another appointment. So, and the other thing too is that, with the CARES Act, and that was passed here because of COVID, the Federal CARES Act. Before CARES Acts, you had to be licensed in the state that the patient resided in. So if I'm licensed in Colorado and the patient's in California, I could not do teletherapy. However, now with the CARES Act, you're allowed to cross state lines, which has been a big boost. And also, before you had to have a HIPAA compliant encrypted video platform. Well, now because of the CARES Act, you don't have to have that. Now, the one thing I will say that in January, next month, January 21st, the CARES Act expires. And now whether it's going to be renewed again or it's going to be let go, it'll be interesting to see what happens after this CARES Act, if they go back to still allowing you to cross state lines, if they're going to require again that you have a video platform that's HIPAA compliant. So we're all looking to see what happens with that.
Thank you. I think those are really great points to make. So right now what we're going to do is kind of start to go through and summarize some of the key highlights or key points, takeaways that each of our panelists would, like for all of the audience here to come away from this conversation with. So I'm going to ask each of the panelists to take about 2 to 3 minutes each and maybe just pull out a few things that they thought were most impactful or parting words that they would just want to make sure innovators and entrepreneurs as well as investors should really be considering in this telebehavioral technology space. So Arlen, do you mind if I start with you?
Sure. So my advice is that there's 2 reasons why your digital health product or service, including telebehavioral health, will fail. One is that you don't have product market mix. In other words, you create a product that nobody wants to buy or use. The second is you don't have a viable business model and you can't make it up in volume. If you're spending more than you're generating, you're out of business. So we can go into the whole lean startup methodology and all the aspects of the business model canvas and how you do customer validation. But the point is that this is a very rapidly moving environment. And you're going to have to deal, as I said before, how are you going to compete with these enormous legacy companies? Cable, big tech, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, you name it. Because my view is probably in a year, if you're a small startup or not even a reasonable size scale up, you're gonna be a bit player in this game. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't survive or thrive. There's that old saying that the riches are in the niches. So if you can find a gap that Amazon, for example, I call it MedSign because they got something. They're going to be one of the biggest health providers in the world. They probably already are. So whether it's medical device or distributed information or remote sensing or Fitbit or whatever, that's the world you're going to be playing in. So if I were you, don't put yourself in a position where you're going to go, gee, I didn't see it coming.
Yeah, very good point. Okay, thank you so much for that, Arlen. We appreciate all of your expertise that you've shared with us here today. Pennie, do you mind giving us your take? 2 to 3 minutes, please.
Okay, sure. I think one of the things, and I can speak more on the the side that's providing adjunctive, complementary preventive care adjuncts to therapists. I think we're looking really at a new paradigm going forward. We're looking at how people engage with their provider, supplemented by tools. So I like Arlen's example there of is it a person to a device? Is it a provider to a patient? And I think what I would like to see going forward is it's the provider with the patient enhanced by really high quality tools that it support the person's individual experience when they're out of the doctor's office, which is most of the time. So how are you really enhancing that relationship and extending the quality of care and allowing providers to do a better job for more people? Because really you're shifting some you're enhancing the self-responsibility of individuals in their self-care around behavioral change. And you're also extending in our model, you're extending the clinician's toolkit, because we're designing this for providers to be able to have these quality tools to work with their patients with. So you're solving a couple of these are new areas where there is not a lot of work. The other, I think, in terms of, I think thought leaders in this area are really looking for ways to expand that connection between providers and integrate in medical care advances in how we can help with these complex problems, both social determinants of health and the internal experience, the traumas, the defenses, the psychology of people, which has a very unique to each person, evolved over time. So how are we going to really assist that therapeutic process for all parties concerned, all stakeholders? And I guess the last big area where I want to see advances, where we want to play a part, is in how can we really help healthcare succeed? We do not need to make this more challenging for doctors. We don't need to provide technology that's one more hoop for them. They not only need to trust it, but it needs to be seamless and work for them. It needs to be easy onboarding and reimbursable or other financial savings. That's a whole nother big topic. But how do we take better care through behavioral health technology of our providers themselves? How do we create organizations that are more resilient and show more adaptability to the known and unforeseen challenges that come before us? So may you all find a way to follow your values and your morals and really hold to what, and please be bringing in, have healthcare providers as leads in your company. This is serious stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. That was actually raised on a previous panel discussion, I believe, from last month, talking about the importance of incorporating physicians as key stakeholders and rather than viewing them as an obstacle or a workaround, right? But really engaging them and how important that is also to facilitate faster adoption of these new technologies, right? They're an important stakeholder to consider in this, as ultimately the care is still physician-based. So Mark,
I just want to add, I'm not talking about somebody who's an advisor who you check in with, once a month. I'm talking about the substance of what I call it content, but the substance of what you're communicating is really driven and led by experts in their field, built by, created by, not just come in and say, well, you got a good idea there. Okay, I hope I'm not driving that point home too hard, but I see it missing too much in other products. There's just not enough deep knowledge. And those of us who have expertise can see it right away. We open up an app, they don't have it right. We know a licensed clinician who was an expert in the field did not create this tool.
Well, I think that's a perfect message for this audience. Mark, do you want to share your key highlights?
Yeah, so I would like to share, in my own humble opinion, where I think what's going to happen after COVID's over with as far as teletherapy. And, I think we're going to see a hybrid system of teletherapy in in-office settings. Not everyone's a candidate for teletherapy. If you're a person with a severe mental health issue, for example, you're bipolar or schizophrenic, you are not a candidate for teletherapy. You need to be seen in an office setting. However, if you just take mild to moderate depression, mild to moderate anxiety, that's 80% of mental health. Those people can be served by teletherapy. So it'll be interesting to see if therapists are able to cross state lines. I think that's going to maybe be more happen than not. And so you know, the teletherapy is here to stay. It was a thing that was once nice to have. Now it's a necessity. And also, I'd like to answer Arlen's question about band access to broadband. I think the future will not be cable or broadband, but will be 5G. And the reason I say that is that with cable, you have to run the cable physically through. You know, Arlen and I are both here in Denver. If you go to the Rocky Mountains, that's where the issue is. And if you can put a tower out there and have, do a video session from your smartphone by 5G, because 5G is going to be 100 times faster than 4G, that's going to be the future, and that's going to help the digital divide. And I remember when I was in China on a medical mission back in 1989, the Chinese weren't that wealthy, but they all had a cell phone. And I didn't understand it. Someone explained, well, they never had really landlines, telephone lines like we had in the States. And instead of developing their landline, they just skipped that and went straight to cell phones. And I think you're going to see that with broadband. They're going to skip cable and go straight to 5G network, which will take care of the digital divide.
I think that's a good point, but I would mention that it's only having broadband access is one of the legs of a 3 and arguably a 4-legged stool to closing the digital divide. Broadband, yes. Hardware, tech support, education, and simply creating access via satellite, broadband, 5G, you name it, isn't going to solve the problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are all really great points. And in the interest of time, Balint, I'm going to ask you to share your highlights in the Slack that we're about to go to. So I'm going to wrap up this panel discussion, and we're gonna Jimmy Kimmel you here, Balint, with your running out of time. But so let me just read this here. So please join us next month, January 28th, for our first HealthTech Rapid Conference of 2021. And until we meet again, if you'd like more information on the monthly HealthTech Rapid Conference event series or the HealthTech Networking Club, please head to the Bene Studio website. So we're now going to go into the Slack networking break to talk to each other on Slack and hear Balint's key highlights that he was unable to share with us live. So Networking Club members, please join us on Slack. The link is in the Zoom chat, and to everyone watching this live stream, stay online and we'll be back shortly.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Telehealth HealthTech Startup Award at the HealthTech Rapid Conference December event. This event is hosted by the HealthTech Networking Club. I'm Sandra Miller, for those of you who are just coming in now, CEO of Runway Innovation Hub, and I'll be your moderator for the HealthTech Startup Award. One of the things I wanted to mention is that, as you may know, these sessions are recorded. And it's really interesting to see that we're seeing like a really high viewership of these events after the fact. And so for example, for the last few months, viewership for each month's recording of the event has been at around 4,000, maybe just a little bit shy of that. 4,000 people are viewing this event, the recording of this event that's posted on the YouTube channel and the HealthTech Networking Club website page. So, which is fabulous, because that means all these wonderful startups that we're all going to have the privilege of hearing from today are getting really nice exposure, and that's a really important. So let's get this going. I am excited to welcome our panelists for this event. Dr. Gary Goldman, who is founding partner at the Global Health Impact Fund, and Tommy Miller, who's senior counsel at Nixon Gwitt Law, and Balint Bene, who is founder and CEO of the namesake Bene Studio. So they are our judges today. And I'm going to ask each of the judges to briefly introduce yourselves. So let's start with Gary. Tell us just quickly a little bit about yourself so people understand the perspective that you're going to bring with your comments. Thanks, Gary.
Sure. Gary Goldman, 35 years of background in healthcare. I've worn pretty much every operator hat there is to wear, as well as being having a 35-year career as a clinical anesthesiologist with the Sutter healthcare system. Serial entrepreneur. Started the Global Health Impact Fund about 2 years ago, because after 30 plus years of being on the other side of it as a serial entrepreneur CEO, it became quite apparent to me as an informaticist traveling around the country that when I met at the elbow with all of my colleagues, they were all quite disenfranchised, unhappy with the mess we've created with electronic healthcare records. We sat here at the precipice of a digital healthcare revolution. So we created the fund and our Global Health Impact Network to allow clinicians to actively participate in the ongoing digital revolution.
Great, thank you, Gary. Tommy with Nixon Gwitt Law.
Thank you. Yep, I'm Tommy Miller. I'm our life science lead at Nixon Gwilt. We serve established and startup companies that are laser focused on healthcare innovation in a few buckets like providers, digital health, and health tech, and more specific to my practice area, which focuses on life science. So we help manage those barriers and create new pathways for tech, and that's where I bring my expertise to the table.
Thank you. Sorry, I had a typo. It's Nixon Gwilt. I apologize
Yes.
for the mispronunciation. Thank you.
Yep.
And Balint?
Hello, everybody. My name is Balint Bene. I'm the CEO of Bene Studio. Bene Studio is a digital product consultancy. We have a focus on health technology, and we work with startups. We delivered more than 100 applications, both mobile, web, and we also focus on complex systems. So I would like to bring this experience and this approach into this program, and I would like to learn from you because this is the point: how to help each other, how to highlight your products, your companies, and how to learn from each other. So I hope you also will enjoy it as much as I am.
Great. And let me just give you a quick introduction about me so you understand why I might be involved with this HealthTech group. So I really spent the first half of my career focused in the healthcare space and working with primarily medical device inventors and entrepreneurs. And as part of that, I co-founded the Stanford Biodesign program, which has really teaches a methodology, a process around biomedical technology innovation. And that program has, since been the model for well over 35 other programs around the world who follow the biodesign methodology. We also produced a textbook that is used. It's sort of, if you will, the lean startup for medical devices. Really focuses on how do you go from starting from a blank sheet of paper to coming up with an invention and taking that to patients. So, and I've also been on the investor side, and as well as developing several innovation and entrepreneurship education programs, accelerators in a variety of technical areas, technology areas and industry verticals. And at Runway Innovation Hub, we're based in San Francisco in the Twitter building, and we work with tech startups in many different sectors, as well as corporates, and help corporates with our corporate innovation consulting group with a wide array of innovation challenges. And so with that, let's turn to talking, let's hear from some of these startups. So the startups who are going to be participating today are Lisa Pape, who's founder of Walk with Path, Thomas Conroy, founder of MedSign, David Martin with Age at Home, and Valentino Magale of Softcare Studios. And one of the things that's pretty cool is we have startups from all around the world with us today, including from Copenhagen, New York, San Francisco, and Rome, Italy. So I love the global nature of this. Here's how today's session will run. Each startup will have 4 minutes for their pitch. After, and I'll be keeping time, and I will call time and probably just ask you to do a quick wrap up if you're over. I'm sure all of our startups have practiced for time and no one will go over today. And after the pitch, I will ask the judges to briefly ask any questions, clarifying questions of the startup, and maybe give some feedback. And after the Q&A, I'll ask the judges to score the startup by literally holding up your fingers on a scale of 1 to 5, with a score of 5 being the highest. And at the end of the pitches, the startup with the highest score will be announced as the HealthTech Startup of December. And that winning startup will receive a planning session with Bene Studio to enhance the development of their product. And they also can gain a one-on-one coaching session from Runway, i.e. with me. And all startups participating in today's session are also eligible for a free product discovery from Bene Studio. And as well, they'll be getting lots of love on social media and other channels. And I did get the clarification or an additional update on our viewership, in that we actually also get 6,500 views on Facebook as well. So again, lots of great exposure. So with that, I'm going to ask Lisa to Lisa, let's see your screen and hear from you I want to make sure we
of
can
course.
hear your voice.
Hello,
Okay.
everyone.
Great. So if you want to pull up your screen.
Yeah.
We see you and hear you. All right.
Great. So do you see my my slides?
We see your slides, we hear you, and I'll start the timer when you're ready.
Okay, perfect. So hello, my name is Lisa Pape. I'm the founder of Walk with Path. We've been around since 2014. We launched our first product, Pathfinder, in 2017, and we gained reimbursement in some countries since 2019. At the moment, we're developing a second product, which is a smart insole. So this is what I'll be talking through today. So the problem overall that we're seeking to tackle is that of frailty and falls. There are over 220 million people worldwide who are frail for various reasons, and about a third of those over 65 will fall at least once a year. The cost of falls is significant. It's estimated at 55 billion euros every year in the Western world, and the types of issues that we tackle currently have no other solution or no cure. So here's a short video describing freezing of gait, which is a symptom in Parkinson's disease. So the gentleman here is struggling to move forward. You see a lot of trembling of the legs. That is very debilitating. He's trying to do simple tasks like moving around in his own home. And you can see that with this symptom, he's at a very high risk of falling over. In fact, 70% of falls in Parkinson's are due to this. Here's Pathfinder, which is a laser shoe attachment. It projects this green line in front of the gentleman. And as you can see, he's able to walk much more steadily and safely. So that's our first product. We have over 500 users worldwide of Pathfinder. We're reimbursed in Denmark and Norway, and we currently have a clinical health economic study in the UK. We presented at Parkinson's congresses worldwide, and we also have published in peer-reviewed journals the effects of Pathfinder on the freezing of gait symptom. We're now also working on another product called PathFeel and Path Insight. It is a vibrational feedback insole to improve balance for people such as those with neuropathy. Neuropathy is a lack of sensation on the soles of the feet, commonly caused by diabetes, but also in general by aging and other conditions. PathFeel acts to improve balance through the direct feedback. It also does real-time monitoring through the data analytics platform, personalized medicine, and it can act to improve clinician effectiveness. We're currently conducting a clinical study on this product and aim to launch it in 2022. On the market today, one of the most common solutions for falls prevention is physiotherapy. However, physiotherapy can carry a high non-compliance rate, meaning people don't necessarily do their exercises, and therefore it can become ineffective. In terms of the market for insoles, there are other insoles on the market that have sensors, but nothing on the market with active feedback, such as what we're providing. In terms of our route to market, we're operating with a B2C channel, so we sell directly via our website. We also have retail partners, and we work with key opinion leaders, such as specialists in the field, be it neurologists or diabetologists in case of the different products. We also work B2B2C, where we have sales to public and private healthcare providers, such as those public healthcare systems I mentioned, but also insurers such as AXA. We're currently working with AARP, which is the American Association for Retired People, to access the American market as well, and also have plans to enter Germany along with the UK next year. On a B2B basis, we're hoping long-term to leverage pooled patient data to build new products and partnerships. So we're currently in conversations with pharma about that, as well as academic research, and also for the purposes of using our insole as a tool for clinical studies in real life, which is something that's often lacking where it's mostly done in the labs. On the team, there is myself. I have a background from JP Morgan, for instance, in finance, but also in design and human biology. And along with me, there's Florin, who's my co-founder, who has a background from Microsoft and is our lead engineer. On the management team, there's also Nuala, who has a background as an occupational therapist and has worked at the WHO in public health, as well as Aaron, who has a background from Smith & Nephew in business development and an MBA. In addition to that, we obviously have a wider team, and we're supported by a range of advisors across clinical and business. Thank you very much. I look forward to taking your questions.
Great, thank you. That's a terrific presentation. So I am going to ask Balint, do you have a question? And then Gary, I'll go to you.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, really great one. And I'm curious about that fact, what you mentioned, that there are no other providers focusing on active feedback. So what's the reason behind it?
Most providers are solutions that have sensors in the insole, for instance. So you have that around. I had a couple of examples in the slide. One is called FeedMe. It's an insole that is used primarily in a clinical environment. So it's used by a physiotherapist or occupational therapist in a clinical session for being able to monitor things related to ulcer development in diabetics. The active feedback isn't available as such. The reason behind that can be multiple. It's a different, it provides a different class of medical device. So if you don't have active feedback, then you're a class 1 medical device in the European market. As soon as you introduce active feedback, you become a class 2A. So the time to market is much longer, and it also is more costly. So that's something we're kind of experiencing at the moment with the changes to the medical regulations in Europe as well. This provides a bigger hurdle. So to speak, but we believe it's essential for the compliance part as well, because that's one of the key benefits for the end user.
Thanks.
Great. Gary?
Yeah, thank you. Interesting presentation. So you kind of answered part of my question was, you know, we look at this market very closely from a venture fund perspective, but when you hear this market, most of the entities that are in this market are actually either not trying to prevent the falls, but take care of the falls after they happen. So they're monitoring seniors at the point of care and then engaging. So this is very interesting. But then as you brought up, you know, from a clinician perspective, this takes you into a very different market. Would you label yourself as digital therapeutics? And if you are, then you're right. That takes you down the path, at least in the States, of FDA approval, clinical studies, you know, which meaning going through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So the potential is great, but then the path is great. The amount of money that you'll need to raise is much, much greater to get to accomplish that. So I guess my question is that the path you're going down? It sounds like yes.
So the Pathfinder is the laser product that we have on the market already. We have a journey with the FDA for that. We'll be 510(k) exempt based on existing knowledge. So that is clear. So what we're looking to establish with Pathfinder is more on the reimbursement path. So we've been looking at whether we are a DME type product or a medical device type product, and what the coding and coverage is for those two. And that's what we're working with AARP on, as well as the Michael J. Fox Foundation actually is helping us with this as well. For PathFeel, we do also anticipate becoming a medical device under the US regulations. We've been looking at whether we'll be a class 1 or a class 2. There is a sort of comparable product without active feedback, and they are class 2. However, we found stuff like electronic toothbrushes are class 1, even though they actually provide some sort of activity in your mouth. So we need to establish if we'll be class 1 or class 2 for the purposes of that. But you're right, on the market, there's a lot of falls products post falls. You know, we all know this lanyard, which is the emergency button, right? But we're interested in prevention. That's the core activity for us. And that's where we see making the biggest difference.
Quick follow on. So can you monitor like an accelerometer falls as an added value for your product?
Yeah, we have accelerometers in both of our products as it is right now. Yeah.
Great. Okay.
But we're interested in establishing the steps that happen before the fall so we can try to prevent it instead.
Great. Okay. In the interest of time, let's see. I want to ask the judges if they have any sort of pearls or feedback. Go ahead, Tommy, for Lisa, and then we'll shift to the scoring.
Yeah, I actually know Qortex very well. They, you know, when we were talking about those sorts of this sort of space, I would recommend probably looking at multiple reimbursement streams for this particular product, because I do think that you have the opportunity to probably capture both DME and device type of reimbursement, as well as some interesting, really, RPM is out there in telehealth type of reimbursement pathways. So I would keep looking at various different revenue streams to the extent that that's what you're looking to capture. But I think this looks like a really good product.
Yeah, absolutely. And Qortex is somebody we're obviously keeping a close eye on, right? So the coding that they're using, etc. And there was a lot of new codes this year as well released for telemedicine, which is of course very exciting for us.
Great. Well, so now we need to shift to scoring, and I need to have my judges show us, hold up your hands. I want to see some fingers for your score for this great presentation. So 1, 2, 3, go. So we have 3 4s. Okay, thank you very much. And next up, great job, Lisa. Thank you for that presentation. Next up, we have Thomas Conroy, founder of MedSign. Thomas is in New York, I believe. Yeah. So Lisa was in Copenhagen, and now we go to New York. So we're going to go all around the world this morning, which is kind of fun. Thomas, we
freezing cold New York.
Yeah, we see you and we hear you, and you can bring up your slides, share your screen, bring up your slides. We see your slides and just
get a full screen. How's that?
That's great. And I'll start the timer as soon as you're ready to go.
And let me know if the screens are changing. Sometimes we've had some issues here, so I want to make sure you see the follow-on screens. So I'm ready to go. And welcome everybody to Qortex. Actually, it's Qortex product by MedSign, and it's changing the way virtual services are delivered directly into the home. I'm Tom Conroy. A little bit, very quick about my background. I've had a distinguished career with the military, the Air Force. I've launched space shuttle rockets. I've been with the Central Intelligence Agency, Advanced System Development for Space. And then afterwards, I retired and went to the motion picture industry. While I was having a great time at Disney films, became a director, an actor. And then along the way, 4 people in my family simultaneously got sick. And I couldn't be with them all. And I noticed and watched over the failure modes of the healthcare industry, and I have to say there's failure modes here, that I thought that I could help improve the lives of those people at home by providing new services. So I created MedSign. We're a digital health communication company. We develop cutting-edge virtual care technologies to connect medical professionals with their patients at home, and we do this through the television set. The system was designed for all demographics, but it's specific for the senior citizens, and I'll talk about that reason why shortly. We can enable connectivity, any type of remote device, visual, voice, or data. The second key feature to this, which is really important when you're talking about mental health, is the fact that they can talk to their loved ones. Take a look what happened in New York, where 42% of those people who died were in nursing homes, unable to see their loved ones. That's going to end with this system. We have the ability to deliver third-party services on our system as required by the customer. The system has been developed for global application, and there's no technical limitations. And I will talk about satellite, 5G, 4G, or whatever. There's no limitations on our system. So the tsunami hit us. And what we believe is we could capitalize on that tsunami. But the truth is, and I'm not going to go all these numbers because I got 4 minutes. But the truth is, it's a monster growth in this industry. It's not going to disappear. Congress is going to include this in all the plans in the future. At what level, I don't know yet. But the truth is, it's here. But the main problem is the majority of seniors are not using the telehealth services that are being provided. And they're the ones that use up most of the Medicare dollars. So you got to understand the challenges, just like I did when I was in the space program. To make Americans healthy and well requires complete access to the demographics, especially the seniors. So what's the reasons affecting successful implementation of healthcare in the home? Well, the current telehealth systems, 260 companies that are out there, are not providing systems that meet the seniors' needs. The elderly are technology averse. Now, I'm not talking about the young, early elderly like 65. I'm talking about those who are 75, 80, 90. And understand, folks, more seniors are living every single day here. So we're getting a huge demographics that's going to stay with us for a while, not 3, 4, 5 years, but 10 years or longer. So with that, because there's this technology aversion, there's a significant lack of adoption of the tablets and smartphone systems. With that, you have a reduced access to quality healthcare in the home. So, and the same thing holds true for the global demographics. There's 703 million seniors out there, so why can't we support them too? We can with this system. So Qortex is a communication platform. We use the home TV to provide virtual connectivity, medical professionals, and another thing we just learned, students with teachers here in the United States, family and friends, and we developed this as an open architecture so that any third-party application, mental, behavioral, health applications can all be included into the system. And we could do remote monitoring with the patient at home. And with that, we also included a suite of health, wellness, safety, and security applications that we developed in-house that will complement the other systems. So what is Qortex? Qortex is a hub, internet connected hub, a remote control that was senior designed, and a camera. And we're HIPAA compliant with our system. We can provide personalized TV, health and wellness reminders on the screen. We can integrate with any third-party applications such as Amwell, Teladoc, and we're talking to Teladoc right now. We can integrate.
Tom, you are out of time, so
holy mackerel!
Yeah, so I need you to sort of give us a closing statement. You have a closing line to make.
I'm speaking fast New Jersey.
Yeah.
Okay, closing line. My closing line is, this is a very integrated super system that any hospital, caregiving agency, and I'll go to it, any government agency can use around the world. And I have a very detailed presentation here that can provide this information to anybody that's interested. I put on the system here my contact, and I ask that everybody here can take a look. What I'm here for is to raise money. My next round of funding already raised 4.1 million. I'm looking for a $10 million input, and I'm willing to talk to anybody that's interested. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. And now we'll shift to judges. Judges, do you have any? Let's get some questions for Tom. Go ahead. Let's start with Tommy first, and then we'll go to you, Gary.
I think it's a really interesting concept. I think that as seniors, I think the demographic that you're talking about right now in the 70s, 80s, 90s, they did not have the technology that at the younger ages that the younger seniors now are getting more comfortable with. So I have a question around sustainability of how technology averse these current young seniors are going to remain as they age. And then my second kind of question is, what stops Zoom Health, who's very much embedding themselves into telehealth platforms right now, from launching a same kind of smart hub app to be able to just pull up on a TV in general? So I guess those are my two questions for you.
Good questions. First of all, we are dealing with Zoom right now. So I will say I'll open up that kimono a little bit, because Zoom has partnerships, and we really feel that having a partnership with Zoom would enhance our business model. And but you also have to consider a device that can incorporate medical devices, diagnostic devices in here, and that's what we can do. We see the future as being fully integrated with the smart TV in the future. Smart TVs are going to have cameras, and that's what you need.
To play off of what you just said, so I don't know, you might have been able to get to it eventually in your presentation. So Qortex is going to be a bridge to connected devices in the home as well, in addition to, okay.
Yeah, and any third-party application that's available for health and wellness, we can incorporate into our system. But it is the bridge of having our goal is to have the ability to perform an examination in the home.
Great. Gary.
Thanks. Tom, interesting. I get that you didn't have enough time, and I'm also a quick talking New Yorker, so I get it. I know this market really, really well. Our venture fund is looking at a number of different companies in this space, but it's a very broad space. And the way I break it down as a clinician is that first mile, right? And the first mile is the biggest hurdle in all of this: remote patient monitoring, telemedicine, all of that stuff. the technology part of it, you know, 1 billion people are going to be working, organizations are going to be working on that. But the winner is the one who can get into that first mile. Okay. If you're already in the home providing a service and everybody's got a TV and everybody's pretty much these days got Wi-Fi, cable service, all of that, right? So my first question is I get what you're doing. Who are your partners? Are you partnering with Infinity and are you partnering with AT&T? I mean, are you the partner of that group that's already in the home providing that service, and then you're a value add on to that service?
To answer your question, yes. We're agnostic to the communication company that's providing the service in the home, whether or not it's Comcast, Fios, Spectrum. We are in conversations with them right now. And that's pretty exciting. And we don't care. For instance, we're dealing with the Archcare of New York. You know, that's the second largest archdiocese of New York. We are in there dealing with seniors that are 70, 80, 90, and almost 100 years old. And the system has been adopted by the toughest thing for technology is to get seniors to adopt. If you don't have adoption, you have nothing. Here we are with some of the oldest Americans right now using our system. And it's a really successful system pilot program that's going on there. And starting January, it's a revenue generation program.
And you view yourself as being agnostic when it comes to the other side of the coin, remote patient monitoring, telemedicine solutions. I mean, you can partner with anybody once you're at the point of care.
That's absolutely correct. So if
I have
it's
a million other
questions. I know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know,
I have a million other questions, but we'll do that separately.
Balint, I'm going to ask you to shift to feedback because we're tight on time. So if you can sort of maybe phrase your question in the form of giving Tom some feedback.
Yeah, sure. 2 in 1, no problem. Yeah. Really interesting field, and for me, it would be really useful to get the whole picture within the 4 minutes. So it's a question and the feedback 2 in 1. And the question part of this feedback is what's your current traction and the actual revenue model nowadays?
So starting, we're in pilot programs with Northwell Health, Archdiocese of New York. We met with the Secretary of the VA. We are now working with the Veterans Administration. We went through their IT gauntlet. Again, anybody that understands things, if you can't get through IT, you're not getting into a building or a service. So that's where we are right now. And we begin our revenue generation January 1st.
Great.
Thanks.
Great. Nice, concise answer. Okay, so let's go for scoring. Judges, if you can hold up your hands for Tom. So 1, 2, 3, go. What do we got for Tom? So okay, so Balint, you're a 3, right? Yeah. Okay, great. So we have 2 4s and a 3. Thank you very much, Tom. I'm sorry about the reality of time. I will make a general comment. These sort of online presentations for pitch events are sort of this forced construct. But think about for future, because you're going to be doing more of these that are timed. Think about every slide. Think about your time budget, and this is sort of a general sort of piece of feedback to all the entrepreneurs that are watching this. You have to think about what are the critical things that you need to say, because you didn't get to your what is Qortex until 3 minutes and 30 seconds.
Yikes.
Yeah. So
well, I'm used to having.
I know.
Even with investors, it's 20 minutes. Next thing I know, I'm in there for 2 hours.
Yeah, I know, but
it's great. So yeah, it's something new.
Yeah. So just think about that in future. So next up we have David Martin with Age at Home. David, we see you. We don't hear you yet. And now I think we're going to hear you. Yeah, we hear you. We see your slides.
And then you want them in full screen. So there we go. Okay.
All right. So I'll start the timer when you're ready to go.
Just go. So age at home is a radically different approach to addressing the issue of wellness. And it's a very seminal product. We're just coming out of stealth mode. I've spent the last year doing a bunch of underlying plumbing. But all of the concerns that people have about privacy, about trust in their AI, about how do they work with smart homes and stuff, we think are all amenable to a specific use case, which is really taking care of our parents. And why I say our parents is my sister Karen is the CEO of the company. She's also on the call. But she and I began a discussion several years ago about how we were going to take care of our parents. I actually went and did a bunch of stuff at IBM where I used to work to investigate technologies that would be relevant to it. And since that time, we've actually not only looped in my father as the chief medical officer and my brother to help us do things with finance, but we've also included other people in social work, engineering, marketing, and my other brother, Steve, gives us legal advice. What is Age at Home? Age at Home is first and foremost a private, personal, proactive, integrated wellness virtual assistant. So you're familiar with the Amazon Alexas, you're familiar with all of the virtual assistants that the big corporations are trying to deploy. But the big thing that's different about what we're doing is we start as a private personal AI, one just for the needs and wants of the individual we're serving in the home, with nothing leaving the site. We can integrate all of the local IoT devices and incorporate them into our analysis. But the number one thing that we do is privately, proactively use that data and the analysis of it to notify caregivers, the individual, and intervene appropriately with notifications, et cetera. The primary question we look at for the caregivers that we were concerned about is, how is grandma? How is, things going on? Is she having a good day? Is she having a bad day? Is she at home? What's going on? So I started looking at all the things that I could do technically that would roll up from an analysis perspective into the same types of simplified dashboards that my multinational, international, enterprises have paid me to figure out for them, and turn it into something that's going to be appropriate for not only Karen, who lives near my folks, but also me, who lives thousands of miles away. We looked at the types of engagement we wanted to have with the elderly and the kinds of information that we thought were critical to their wellness and happiness, safety, and long-term, their longevity. And we said all those things we want to do, A, they're interactive, B, they're based upon very intimate knowledge of who you are, what you're doing, where you are. And I think most importantly is they have to be ones that have a shared self-interest in the individual who wants to live longer at their home by themselves, as well as the caregivers who want to take care of them. But we don't necessarily want to show all the details to the caregivers. We really want to take care of grandma. So from a product roadmap perspective, as I said, we're just coming out of stealth mode. We anticipate having a very rapid version 1, progression of features, because what I've built in the underlying open source platform that I call Motion AI is the capability to integrate an arbitrary number of AIs in a locally executing GPU enhanced device and learn on that same device from interactions with the end users. And then keep all of that stuff private and local and never have to worry about the fact that you've got a camera in your bathroom that's asking you questions. I have a camera in my bathroom. I couldn't put it in the bathroom until I told my wife, honey, the AI is on that box in the corner of the bathroom. Nothing leaves that box. I was gonna show you the full demo, but I'm gonna show you a little bit of demo.
Actually, you are over time. So unfortunately,
over 5 minutes.
Over 4 minutes, yeah.
Wow. Okay. So we got a business model. We think we can sell this device. We've got a number of price points. We have a growth plan in terms of we're starting in the kitchen, moving into living area, bathroom, and bedroom. We think there are multiple audiences down the road that would address clinical issues et cetera, third-party emergency services, HIPAA, pharmacy. I even think we can do clinical trials at home with the infrastructure that we have from a blockchain and a security perspective. We think there's a huge growing market for this, and we're looking for an initial capital raise for our angel round to get us going in 2021. And then long-term, we see a bunch of potential exit strategies as well as IPO to get us out the gate. And thank you very much. I'm sorry, I thought I was going fast, but not fast enough.
Nope, that's but that's okay. We got through it. And judges, let's see, who has the first question for David? Go ahead, Balint.
Yeah, so really exciting technology. And my question is, who are the main competitors? How does the competition landscape looks like? Not just the direct competitors, but a bit wider competition.
I think there are a lot of people trying to look at the application of a number of different AI techniques in the home. Cherry Home, for example, has a solution that they're selling to put into the home with a AI to look at motion cameras and try and figure out what the output should be. However, and there's even companies in the industrial use cases watching workers and trying to figure out how to warn them of safety issues, et cetera. We think we're particularly different because we do everything privately in the home without any of the data leaving the system ever, right? And we think that provides us the ability to be much more intimate in terms of types of assistance we can provide to the individual over time. As I said, I wasn't going to be able to do this, you know, by having a camera in the bathroom or a microphone with my wife until I told her that nothing was leaving the house.
Yeah,
Great.
thanks. It's a really important point.
Tommy.
So I have a question about that. If the idea is that none of the data leaves the house, I'm curious to know what the future growth integrations look like. For example, if you want to do clinical trials, or you want to do connecting to EMS, or you want to do you know, either remote monitoring or any of that, what's the barrier to any of that leaving the house, or what's kind of like the growth iteration of that, if that's your big selling point?
The plumbing that is configured is to provide a fully homomorphic encrypted data stream out of the house, but only for those things that the end user chooses to do up front. And that's all governed by a distributed shared ledger proof of stake blockchain that ensures that everyone is known, everyone is credentialed appropriately. Today, the only credentials we have are our own, but over time we would expect to include biosafe pharma credentials, you know, at the high end when I'm talking about a clinical trial.
Okay, great. So Gary, I'm going to ask you to provide any feedback to help David improve for next time. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute, Gary.
Better? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So David, yeah, I mean, definitely, you know, someone who, all of us listen to a lot of pitches, you really got to be very, very concise about what's the ask, what's the problem, what's the solution, and what's the request. This is a very, very competitive market, as I'm sure you're aware of. And it's important, especially in a market like this or a vertical like this with all the competition, that you're able to also come across as what's your market differentiator, what makes you different than the 15 other companies that I just listened to in the last month who are in a similar place, and what's your focus. So that would be my feedback on this.
Great, thank you very much. All right, judges, let's go ahead and provide a score for this presentation. 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, a 4, a 2, and a 3. Great. Thank you very much, judges. And thank you, David, for that great presentation, and for Karen, your co-founder on the call. Valentino, waiting patiently in Roma. Valentino, we see you. Let's hear you.
Yes, do you hear me?
I hear you, and if you
That's
can bring
perfect.
up your presentation.
All right, let me share. Okay, do you see my presentation?
Yes.
All right, I can start. So again, I'm Valentino Megale, CEO at Softcare Studios, and we're developing digital solutions for the stress management of patients using immersive technologies like virtual reality. So therapy and medical treatments are a huge source of stress for patients. And stress is not only a state of mind. It is something real, it's able to promote the development of additional pathological conditions, and it also represents a risk factor for pure adherence to therapy, resulting in patients avoiding behaviors, difficult patients management, also delays in the work of doctors, and higher cost of treatments. So we can help patients administering drugs like sedatives and painkillers to help them cope with therapy, or we can use drug-free interventions that still lack measurability and scalability. So we want to promote a drug-free approach, but resolving these conditions with the potential of digital technologies. And we decided to use virtual reality because virtual reality is a technology specifically designed to engage our brain, engage our senses, and change our behaviors. And it has a long scientific traction of efficacy in reducing stress-related conditions like anxiety and pain perception. So we wanted to make this potential available as much as possible to patients and clinicians. So at Softcare Studios, we design virtual reality experiences to reduce the stress levels of patients, increase their adherence to therapy, and speed up the work of doctors. At the same time, VR is also a very portable solution. It's suitable for remote and autonomous interventions, which is something meaningful right now during the pandemics. And it allows us for data collection useful to quantify the outcome and patient's experience. So we started from a first project, Tommy, dedicated to the stress management of pediatric patients in critical medical settings like oncology, dentistry, and orthopedics. And we are now expanding our projects for adults and elders. So our goal is to provide a portfolio of VR solutions for different target patients in different clinical settings, selling our VR bundles to patients associations, hospitals, and medical specialists through a B2B business model. We have competitors that are efficiently validating this field. What we want to add to this field is a special focus on the social features of VR scenarios, allowing patients to share the virtual environments with other patients, and also personalization features allowing to adapt the virtual reality scenario to the data collected through the system during the VR sessions. We started 3 years ago. We are now in 9 hospitals, mainly in Italy, but also in Houston, in the Texas Medical Center. We have 4 ongoing hospital pilots, and we are partnering with pharma and medtech companies to speed up the go-to-market and distribution process. Our team is made of 5 co-founders with very different experiences ranging from medical research, business innovation, and virtual reality development, something that was useful to efficiently connect the potential of new technologies and the challenges of the healthcare sector. So this is Softcare Studios, and thank you for your attention. I cannot hear you, Sandra.
Great, thank you very much, Valentino.
Perfect, thank you.
Let's see, Gary has a question, and if you can come off mute, Gary.
Thanks for reminding me. So yes, I mean, this is a very interesting market, which I've studied actually fairly extensively. So, but the one first thing I'll say is, remember, this is a pitch session for the senior market here, right? So my first question is I mean, I guess my first statement is, I get the capability of this technology in healthcare from a broad perspective. And frankly, many of the other markets are much better markets for this. When you're looking at the senior care part of it, you know, the first question that comes to mind is this both diagnostic and therapeutic, okay, number one. And number two, how much time and effort have you spent, and this is not coming randomly, about these kind of devices on the face and head of a senior, and what kind of feedback have you gotten with respect to that?
Sure. So what really matters is to really dose the VR session, because virtual reality in this field should be approached just like an administration of a drug. So dosing the experience in the right moment for the right patients really matters. So we use, for instance, in case of elder patients, virtual reality for around 30 minutes max of session. And we use virtual reality to educate them about the therapy and the critical issues of a specific medical treatment, because education of an adult patient matters to reduce anxiety. We use the same timing of a VR session for pediatric patients, but they are not educated, they are engaged and distracted and trained during a specific treatments like chemotherapy or blood test. So it really depends from the target patient. It's not made to be used 3 hours long. Absolutely not.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Tommy?
First of all, I'm curious to know what platform this is being developed for, Oculus, the various other, you know, VR kind of actual hardware, or if you're trying to actually manufacture something on your own. And then the second is, where do you see this actually being deployed? Are people coming to VR infusion centers or dosing centers, or is this something that is really supposed to be done kind of at home, guided, or?
So we use the Oculus at the moment because it represents the best the best compromise between the price and the performances for us. We use the business license now because there have been a lot of changes also in the login process. Regarding the use, so in case of pediatrics, but also adult patients, hospitals buy the bundle and they have a virtual reality headset always available for the target patients in the hospital. We can use, for instance, Tommy, the VR for pediatric patients during the blood test. So nurses use Tommy to speed up the blood test timing, avoiding children just avoiding the test, no, fearing and because of anxiety and fear. In case of the projects for the elders, the hospitals provides the specific educational content after they prescribe a specific test. For instance, we collaborate with a clinic prescribing an MRI test. So a lot of patients absolutely don't know the MRI test, fortunately. So before the real test, they just can sit in the couch, experience all the details of the test, and go more consciously towards the real test. So this is a value because a lot of patients avoid the real MRI test during the test. And this interruption is producing cost problems, timing problems for the clinics.
So it's half exposure therapy, kind of half CBT.
In this case, yes. In this case, yes. In this case, yes.
Great. And so Balint, once again, I'm going to turn to you to provide some feedback as we wrap up the Q&A portion.
Yeah, you kept the short time frame, which is great, and covered most important aspects. What I'm curious about is the next steps, your goals, exits, and investment strategy and goals. But
okay, so basically our next step is to provide these different solutions through a platform, because a platform would improve the scalability of our solutions. And we are looking to scale our solutions from the Italian market to new markets first here in Europe. So basically we need to strengthen the distribution team and the commercial team to get in touch with new customers, increase the sales, obviously, and to expand our hospital network, which is important for the validation and for the commercial part of our solution.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great presentation. And now, judges, this is the last time for scoring. And so let's put up your fingers. 1, 2, 3, go with your score. So we have 3 4s. All right. So judges, you have we have a tough job because we have a tie for first. So let's get a clear winner here. So we have the Walk with Path presentation from Lisa that we started off with, and we have Valentino. So go ahead and let's give me a score again for Walk with Path. So we've got a 5, 2 5s and a 4. Okay, so we have a 14 now. So Lisa, you were fondly remembered. And then Softcare Studios. Let's go ahead and give another score for that. All right, so we have a 3, a 5, an 8, and a 4. It's 12. All right, great. So, wow. So a closely fought competition. Well, our results are in, and we're pleased to announce that the HealthTech Startup of December is Walk with Path. So congratulations, Lisa, to you and your team.
Thank you
great
so much.
job. And, one of the things I really can't emphasize enough, we had I was inspired by each of the startups that we saw today. One of the things that was fascinating to me from the presentation of David with Age at Home is in 2005, Intel's co-founder Andy Grove was working on this problem. And it was the start of Intel's digital health. And he had this whole, how do you provide sensors throughout the home to care for grandma? And so, David and his team are going after a beautiful big problem that frankly, even Andy Grove couldn't solve. Maybe Andy Grove was ahead of his time, and you guys are going to be the ones to do it. MedSign,
well,
oh
we
my
did
God,
it
fascinating stuff that you guys are doing, and transforming, I think really importantly, for people in their home to do this through the TV, something they're more familiar with. And of course, Softcare. I love the spin that you guys are taking on this. So it truly is a privilege for all of us to hear from you and what you're working on day in and day out. And so thank you to all of the startups that have presented. And again, all of you who are watching now and maybe watching later, please feel free to give these startups some love for all the good stuff they're doing, and maybe even help them. For those of you in the HealthTech Networking Club, let's see if we can help them connect to investors and partners and customers and all that good stuff. So let's wrap things up. So thank you to everybody for attending our December HealthTech Startup Awards. And a big congratulations to our winner, Walk with Path.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. And so for more information on this invite-only networking club that connects startups, investors, healthcare providers, and other key players in the health tech industry, please head to the Bene Studio website, and which I'm sure the link will be in the chat here. Thank you for joining us. Please do join us next month. Oh my gosh, January 28th for our first HealthTech Rapid Conference of 2021. And we please join us on Slack, and we'll finish off our event with some networking now. And to everyone, happy holidays, and look forward to more exciting health tech events next year. And man, do we need to get into the next year. So we need to kiss 2020 goodbye and greet 2021. So let's all spend time in Slackland, everyone, and